Hello guys, I'm Super Ron, welcome back to the channel and we are back on the Caddy build at Autoshack. In previous episodes you've been following along and we've got the 20 valve turbo engine fitted and all sitting in there on its own mounts, all the shafts, everything is connected. We've got the air suspension on all four corners and that is now sitting down on the floor and it is really starting to come together and look like a show car. But if you remember back to the Scirocco show car build I did, the all singing, all dancing, award-winning Scirocco, we're now at the same stage as that. It looks finished, but there is no wiring in the car, just like the Scirocco had. So now we've got to my favourite stage of all builds, and that is the wiring. I'm going to completely hide everything from the bay. Remember those little tabs that we welded on? The wiring is going to run under the wing here, so you're not going to see anything from the engine bay. We're going to chop up the engine loom, so that's all going to be hidden. The fuse box and ECU is all going to be hidden in the car under the dash. So by the time it's finished, it is all going to continue to look exactly like this, like an empty engine bay, but everything is going to work. We're going to be full MOT ready. We're going to have lights, horns, squirters, everything will be here, but hidden. So I've been really looking forward to this because I love making custom looms, and that is what we're going to start on today. We got everything in and mounted where we wanted it. So we need now to connect everything up so it actually works. So on the engine loom side, these 20 valve turbos, they have a main engine loom that comes out and goes to the ECU. So this is how the ECU controls everything on the engine, the injectors, the coils, where it gets all its feedback from the crank sensors. Everything engine side comes through this. And as we go back down the loom a bit, this is where it gets its powers in. This one is power to the coils for a relay, we'll see in a minute. And then this one normally meets to the car loom around the battery area. And this is what gives all its signals for water temperature, oil pressure, oil level, vehicle speed, everything like that to the car and the clocks. Also in here is our powers for the injectors, the solenoids and everything else, so they'll need connecting up. But as a TT is a lot bigger than a Mark 1, we're left with a lot of loom. Now, usually, like you've seen in the previous Caddy 20 valve that I did, I ran the loom up here, went over and into the car there. But as we're doing a show loom on this one, I'm going to run it under here, under the servo. So this is all you're going to see of the loom, that there. Then it'll disappear into the car. We're going to put the ECU in the car, so these will go through the bulkhead underneath. And then we'll also have all our powers we need under the car as well. So like I said, these looms come in two parts and here is the other half. So here is the ECU. There's the other plug that we just saw in the loom. This plug is more inputs. So this is where it connects to the car loom itself. This goes through the scuttle panel in the bulkhead, which is why it's sealed off. Then all the interior loom connects to here. We do have a couple of sensors, just how it's routed. This is the airflow meter. Around here we have the lambda sensors. We have all the bits for the secondary air injection and power steering, so we won't need them. These are the ones for the starter motor. That's starter motor and that's reverse, but we usually use the Mark 1 ones of them, so we won't need them. These are our main relays. This one is for the coils and this one is for the secondary air injection, so we'll be ditching that, won't need that. This relay feeds power to this plug and that's what plugs into the other loom. So that's where the coils get their power. We've got a vehicle earth here. So on these plugs here, they're mainly in groups. So the blue one will go to the drive-by-wire throttle pedal that's staying in the car. So we need to keep that. This one has a lot of useful wires that we need. On the brown, you have the main ignition live that goes into the car. You have the trace for fuel pump relay, which will be still in the car. This is the feed for the lambda heaters and the airflow meter that stays in the car. This one is the feed for this relay, that's where it gets its power. So these are all our power ins. So the white plug, we only need a few out of here. There's lots we won't need. We've got CAN bus, we've got the clutch switch, won't be needing any of them, vehicle speed, but also in here is the output for the tacho and the OBD port for the K-line. So we'll be taking those out of that one. Orange, I think, is things for like the reverse sensor. So I don't think we need a lot out of that one. And black, we don't need anything about that one. So I'm pretty much going to unwrap this entire loom because the easiest way to do conversions is just connect it up here and then just wrap this under the dash or hide it in the scuttle panel. But what I'm going to do is unwrap it completely, just use what I need, make a really nice, tidy, hidden conversion. And then we've got the spaghetti that is the Mark 1 loom. So just under there, you can see 2 holes in the bulkhead, and the Mk1s have 2 wiring looms coming out, bulkhead, and they plug straight into the fuse box. So they are separate. This is what we call an engine loom. So this goes down the car. We've got our oil pressure, coolant temperature, and these are our starter wires. And then also in this loom, we've got the wiper motor as well. So we are going to need to keep quite a lot of this. That's how the dash gets its signals, how the reverse, the starter, and they all go to the fuse box here. This one is our lighting loom. So we get our main power in from the battery. This is all for the lights. So we've got our brake fluid level. We've got our brake light switch. We've got an earth, and then it comes forward to the headlights. Also got our fan switch and radiator fan. So you can see it's had a lot of chops on the side lights, the main headlights, indicators, and a few bullets here and there. And then it goes across the front panel over to the other headlight, side light and indicator. So obviously we don't want that going over the front panel because we're going to keep all this as clean as possible. So this is why in the previous episode you saw I welded studs all the way along the inner wings, and I'm going to run my wiring looms all the way along both sides, down, and then they'll just poke up into the bottom of the headlights. So you won't hardly see anything on the back. I've done it on both sides. So this is going to be obviously for this side wiring, and then instead of going across there, we're going to split it inside the car, so it'll come out each side. So this side, all the lights will run down here, and this side, all the lights, and also the horn and the radiator for the radiator fan, they'll run down that one and then go through a grommet into the car. And it's going to look a lot neater than this. So first off, be a good idea to get the dash out, give me a lot more room to work out the side. And we have got a bit of a mess of wiring, which you saw in the previous episode as well. So I think I'll start getting the dash out and we'll go from there. So we're nearly out. Most of this isn't going to be used again. This is the old base spec Caddy dash, so it hasn't even got a rev counter. All the wiring has got bits spliced into it, got bits taken off. The stereo wiring all chopped, and this dash isn't in great condition. See there, it's all lifted and buckled up. So he has got another dash that's going to be going in this, so that's going to look much better. He's got some GTI clocks, so he's got a rev counter and more gauges. We're going to redo all the wiring. I think he's got some black carpet to go in here as well, so all the carpet can come out. We've got the cable shifter that'll go for the new gearbox, the new dash, new clocks, black carpet. It's going to look very nice. So let's get these last few bits out, and that'll give me some room to work underneath, binning what I don't need. And out it comes. Good thing about a Caddy, we can store everything in the back. Right, let's see what we're left with. And that is a big mess. These always look worse with the dashes out. This will be all for our lights, that'll all stay there. Got a cigarette lighter, things like that. Lots of speaker wires, which can all go. Here's our little mouse attack. You can see he's actually living up in there. We found his summer home under here, and that must have been his winter home. So I'll give that a hoover out. This is our fuse box, and this is where those plugs go in the back that we saw on the end of the Mk1 loom. So we've got that one and the one there. And then that's where they used to go through the bulkhead. Because I'm going to go out through the side there and then along them studs hidden under the wing. And also all under here is going to be coming out because we're going to have a hydraulic clutch and the drive-by-wire throttle pedal for the TC engine. So a lot of modification going on in here as well. So let's get all this junk out and have a clear up. Okay, we've got some reform back. Got rid of all the junk that doesn't need to be there. So now we need to go from our fuse box all the way forwards to the headlight. So they normally go both out the holes there at the back, straight to the front and straight across. I need to split them in the car, so we have all the left going out through a little hole there and all the right going out there. Good good news for me, on the fuses, there's actually left headlight, left dip, right dip, left side, right side. So it actually splits coming out the back of the fuse box. So I don't have to tee into everything. This side, where it comes out the back of the fuse box, it's already 2 wires. So now I just need to find them and extend them to where I want them. So let's strip down that loom out there. And we're actually going to have 3 outlets. We've got the left this side, which will be dip beam, main beam, side lights and indicators, all in this pile, so that will come out that side. Coming out of this side will be the same, dip beam, main beam, side light and indicator. Also running down this side, the radiator fan switch in the radiator and the fan itself, so that will run down this side. And then coming out the middle, which will be coming out probably under the servo there, we need a few there, which will be our brake fluid low warning light, our brake light switches here and here. And we're not sure what we're going to do with the windscreen squirters yet, where we're going to put them, but we'll have to run that to it. We've got a few odd wires coming out. This one used to go to the battery, and that gives main power to the fuse box. Won't be needing that anymore because the battery's not going to be in the bay. Not sure what this one is. This must be something diesel related because I haven't seen that before. But what I did notice is it's had a little bit of a fire on the plug. So obviously this white and black wire has shorted out and actually melted plug, and that is left indicator. So when you travel that down, that's actually been cut off and they've just left that there. If we go to the left indicator plug, the white and black, that had a red wire and that went back in the side and just connected to the rear left indicator. So they obviously had a problem. It shorted out, melted all that. That didn't work anymore. And they just hardwired it to the rear indicator, less than ideal. Also here, we've got the alternator light that's just been chopped off. So they must have hardwired that in somewhere as well. So we might have the other end of this plug, and I can just repin it to what we need, because that's not going to get a good contact. We'll have to check in the fuse box as well, check the pin's okay in the fuse box. But that has had quite a fire, whatever the problem with the front left indicator is. So I think that's everything accounted for. That's better, much more organised. So we've got our fuse box here. Going over that side is the driver's side light, dip beam, main beam and indicator. That's all we need over there. Down this side we've got side light, dip beam, main beam, indicator, and then we've also got the horn and the radiator fan. Coming out the middle we've got brake light, brake fluid low light and the alternator wire. Then over this side we've got the washer bottle, which probably be inside. We've got front fog lights, which we're not having, and we've got this one, which I think is a diesel heater. And that is everything accounted for. So now I've just got to overlay this one in here, because we've got oil pressure, the starter wire, other bits and pieces that need to go in the same places as these. And we can start measuring up and drilling holes to come through into the wheel arch. And here's the other loom all uncovered. Got all the sheathing off. And this one has been a little bit butchered, because as you would have seen in the strip down episode, this isn't its first engine conversion. It actually had a TD engine out of a Mark III, so that got taken out. But this had kind of its own loom put in, and it is sort of joined-ish to the Mark I, not very well. And because of that, the Mark I loom has got quite a bit chopped out of it. I've just seen this one is the wipers. That's had a join and extension for some reason. So I'll just go through this, see what we need and see what can be chucked away. And with a little bit of organisation, we have our starter motor wire. We have coolant temperature to the gauge. We have our oil pressure, high and low. We have our wipers. We have our coolant low warning that goes on the header tank. We've got our rev counter wire to the dash. This one I think is an oil temperature, but for the diesels for the preheat. And then the little sensor that's on top of the header tank that does low coolant level is quite a complex system. It comes in on the plug, but then it's got this relay with a little module in it, and that takes into account coolant temperature and ignition live, the level sensor. It's all a bit overcomplicated. The only thing I haven't found in here is reverse switch. Where the pins are supposed to be for reverse lights in here, there are none. So we have got a spare one in this loom, but reverse aren't normally in this side, which is strange. So I might just have to do a little bit more investigation, because reverse lights are normally in this loom. But at least now I know what I need. So the 2 oil pressure switches will go to the front of the engine. The coolant temperature will probably join the loom back at the plug for the 20 valve loom. We've got our starter wire that needs to go down to the front of the engine as well, through the middle. We've got our wiper that will sneak up through the bulkhead, so that just comes out at the top. Our rev counter wire will join to the 20 valve loom. This will poke out and go in the top of the header tank. So now we can overlay this on this one and see what needs to go where. I've kept the boot on this one because where it comes out the bulkhead, I don't know whether we will use the holes there or move them over. It is quite well shielded there, so we may well do that. But I think the engine loom is going to disappear underneath in the middle. And I saved the other boot off that loom for that. The wipers normally come out of that hole at the bottom into the engine bay, then through that hole there into the scuttle, and then across. But there is, if you can just see, a sneaky little grommet up here that goes into the car. So I can run the wiper wires through there, straight into the wiper without being seen. Right, next I think we have to drill some holes for this to come out. So there's a pretty good spot, but I'm just going to check inside to make sure there's nothing there. Then we can run our loom on the outside. We're through, coming in just where we want it, just behind the fuse box there. Perfect. Do the same the other side. That's typical. This side has come out right on a reinforcement bit, so I'll just give that a little, just so we can get our grommet in nicely when we come through. That's better. So now we've got somewhere to run our wires. And after a lot of deciding, I've drilled the hole where the headlight loom is going to go. So in the headlight bowls themselves, you've got dip beam, main beam, and then side light down there. And what I've done is I've run them together, and then they're going to run up here. It'll all be braided, so it'll be hidden, and then come out right at the top. So you're not going to see this at all. I did think about coming down here and then going to there, which was my first hole. So this is why we always do the mock-up. But now with this, we're going to paint the headlight bowls black as well. So with the black braid, the loom running round there, up, it's going to be invisible. And then that'll join onto the loom where it comes out the front. I've done the same on this side, drilled through at the top, but I put a bit bigger grommet this side with a bit of an oval because we want to get the bonnet cable outside as well. So the bonnet cable is going to come out here, run along, then that will go through the hole and then carry on where it normally does underneath. So you can see where the grommet comes through, completely hidden from the outside. And then all that was left was the indicators on the front, which come in from the bumper, and I think they usually go through there. But we're going to have the indicators going through there. So I've just drilled and put a little grommet hole there, which drops into the front cross member. And with another little hole on the end, that'll come out there and join our looms. I've got 2 holes the other side because we're going to have the radiator fan wires coming in here, and then they'll pop out underneath and come up to the radiator fan and the fan switch over there. Because on the front bumper, these are the indicator wires. So they'll just sit in the chassis leg and you'll unplug it from there when you bolt it out. So it is going to be completely invisible. There won't be anything you can see from the outside. Just thought of a little extra 2 for 1. So for all our headlights, our radiator fans, the horns, we're going to need a big earth point. So that'd be a good point. So if I weld that on there, that will cover the hole, and we've got a nice big M8 earth point here. Plug it on the back. And there it is on. So I've got a nice earth point for the radiator fan, the horns and the headlights there. Got our holes drilled, ready for grommets. We know where these ones are going to come up and run. So I'm super happy with how the planning is going. And we've just had a delivery from Durite. That's where we get all our bits from. They do top quality stuff, So we just topped up our rack, got a heat shrink, fuse box. So this is going to be our fuse box for all the accessories. So this is a 10-way fuse box. All the blades mount at the front. It is waterproof, but we will be putting it inside. And it's got 10 slots, plus 6 slots at the bottom for spare fuses. But the cool thing is, they've got diodes in, so if a fuse blows, it'll put a light on. That's just a handy little indicator. So I think we have 5 for the engine, for all the management. We'll have the electric seats, we'll have 2 for the air rides, and then we will have a spare as well. But because they're mounted on the back, we can make a plate and mount this on next to the original fuse box. And that's gonna look nice and tidy on the front. Then you also get a cover as well. And we've got this junction box, also from Durite. These are stiff when they're new. And that's just got 2 M8 bolts, and that is where our battery lives will come in and come out for our fuse box, and also go to the front of the car to go to the starter motor and alternator. So that just bolts under the dash as well, and that'll just keep that nice and tidy with some good ring terminals on there as well. So now we need to start working out where these are going to go in the car. So what I'm thinking in here, here's the standard fuse box. It's got all the fuse relays for the car, and that's where we're all going to bolt onto. If I can make a little bracket and have our other one even in there. If I make a little bracket to the side of that, so our fuses will be there. They'll be under the dash. You can still get to it under the glove box. And then our big battery jumper point, I'll probably put up right at the back there somewhere, because the battery cable will come down and head to the battery in the back. And we can link everything we need for the fuse box and feed this one as well. And then our battery will run through the hole to the starter motor at the front. I might move this earth point so I can get this nice and close next to that. And like this, because all the wires are on the back, you're not going to see any of it. Sounds like a plan. And while I'm in my unwrapping mood, let's get this Audi TT loom all unwrapped as well, because there's lots in here we don't need. We're not going to need many of these plugs. And in fact, most of this will probably be changed, because our ECU is going to be sitting right next to our fuse box. So most of this can be shortened and put away. We've got the starter wires, got reverse, got lots of aircon, got lots of secondary air injection, power steering, lots of bits we don't need for our purpose. And I've got all my wiring diagrams ready, just to double check, and my notepad. So let's get opening this up. Ta-da! And there it is, looking a little bit slimmer. So I'll cut out what I don't need at the moment. So we've got all the main loom for the secondary air injection pump. So some real beefy 50 amp wires and relay there. They might come in handy elsewhere. We've got the solenoid valves for the secondary air injection. Got the power steering sensor. We've got the reverse and start from the TT. Didn't need any of them. So we need to keep our airflow meter. We've got our relay for the coils, but might slim that down a bit shorter. We've still got our ECU plug, but now we're looking a lot slimmer. So all this is going to go under the dash. We're just going to have to extend the airflow meter back out into the engine bay. And a lot of sticky fingers taking off all this. Oh, and black is for brake light switch. So if you have a dual brake light switch, you have one for your brake lights and one for the ECU. But that's more to do with cruise control and stuff, so we won't need that. So we've just got one more loom to unwrap. I'm not going to unwrap it engine side. We don't even need to really unwrap there. All I need to get to is this plug here, which is our coil feeds, and this one here, which is for a few more sensors that we need to get to the inside. And here is our engine loom dissected up so we could see what was in it. So this is the small ECU plug, and that normally connects to the car loom via the 14-pin plug, but we don't need all of these wires. I've just got the ones that we need. So we've got our coil feed from the big single plug, we've got our injector feed, we've got our solenoid feed and the earth for the sensors, then we've got our 2 for our coolant gauge. So all that's still left in the plug is the electronic speedo, which we're not using, and the oil level, which we're not using, and also the oil pressure sensor, which won't work with our Mark 1 clocks. We've got to put the Mark 1 sensors in. But we've got a mystery wire. We've got this purple and grey, which is pin 14 on here, and that actually goes back to the ECU, and that's pin 116. But it is a mystery because it doesn't come up on any of the wiring diagrams. Even I fired up the Snap-on computer because they have got basic wiring diagrams, and there was no 116 pin. So I'm not sure what that is for. It's never mentioned in any conversions, so I don't think it's needed, but I'll just make sure before I do chop it off. But now we've got what we need. We can run this loom along the bell housing there and disappear underneath the brake reservoir, because it used to go out that hole there, but we're going to move it under the brake servo, so it's going to be completely hidden under there. Then that will pop out inside, come out just where we want it there. And I've still kept the boot from the old loom, so we just need to drill a hole under there, and then the engine loom can come through there. We'll have our fuse box here, the ECU hopefully will go behind there, and that'll be nice and tidy. So I think that's a 45mm hole, and then when I know my lengths I can take this tape off and put some proper labels on with our label maker. But for now we are on the right track. Okay, so I've just whipped the carpet out. Let's have a little bit better look, and luckily we've got a nice big flat plate here, which is actually where the steering column goes through on a left-hand drive car. So there's matching on the other side, but when it's left-hand drive there's a hole there for the steering column to go through to the rack. So that's a nice flat plate, and it's a little bit angled so the loom can come in and go round, so that will be perfect to put a hole in there. Our grommet will sit there nicely on the other side. So I'll work out now where to put the ECU. I've still got the original security cage that they have in the TT. Normally these have security bolts on so you can't get them off, but these do actually make a nice mount, because on the ECU there's no actual mounting hole, so normally they just get wedged in or cable tied up. But that slides in there and it actually locks the ECU on, so you can't take the plugs out. And then you have the bracket with the mounting holes that can bolt on, and that slots in there. So if we can trim these down a bit and maybe get this under here somewhere, that'll just stop that flopping around or being cable tied up somewhere and look much better. Even under there somewhere maybe. We'll have a look. Drill this hole. Perfect. And we've got the perfect welding plate for the old holes. And another one. And the second one is going to be for our white engine loom, which is our starter, alternator, brake light switches, and the other bits and pieces that need to go to the bay. So that'll go through there and pop up under the servo. Right, let's give this a little deburr. Get our ECU loom through there and see how long it is. There's the loom, runs above there, can clip on to the top there, through our hole. And they do just make it inside. I think that is enough. I was going to put a little plug on these anyway. So they come through, put a plug on them, and they can go to where they need to in the car. I think that works out nicely. So I've got some of these plugs, and I can do a 4 and a 2. The 4 to go to the fuse box, and the 2 will go up to the coolant gauge on the clocks. Then this ECU wire is a little bit on the long side, and I'm not going to cut every single one of those wires and shorten them, so I can just run it up and around and then into the ECU like that. So we can put our boot in, put a plug on it, and then that will still be removable with the engine to take the engine out. I've just pulled it through the other hole, and that gives me just a little bit more slack. So I think I'm going to run this one through this hole, and then all the command wires and the powers through this one. That works out perfect. I don't have to extend anything. And here is our Durite kit of those same VW type plugs with all the pins. So I can do a 4 for the engine and a 2 for the coolant. Be nice and neat. And there it is, all loom taped up nice. Got the plugs on the end. I had a little thought when I was putting it together, I don't actually need an extra earth for the coolant gauge, because we've got our earth point going to this pin here. So I just connected those two earths together, then that will earth to the body. So that will just go to our coolant gauge, that will go to our fuse box, and that means this loom can still be removable. So when we take the engine back out, it'll just be unplug, unplug. I've left these extra ones for the speedo and everything like that in there, because it is handy to have extra ones in, just in case we need them in the future for any upgrades. That'll mean we don't have to run any wires through. So I've used males for this side, and then I'll save the females for the power side. It's always good to practice. It doesn't really matter, but if this falls off, the power here will be protected. Whereas if this was the power side and it fell off, that could touch something and short out on the terminal. So you always put your females on the power side, just in case it does fall off. So let's post this back through our new holes. And we can get our grommet on here as well now. So that'll be a finished looking loom. And finish that off nicely with the label maker. So all 5 pins are labelled up. Very professional. And then back inside, we've got that ECU mount you saw earlier, so I am going to use that, and where the security bolts were on the end, I'm just going to put some normal bolts in there, so it's all removable. They'll go in there. So we've got the holes coming through there, so we've got an ECU close by, and the brace for the brake servo is going to be perfect. So I'm going to weld that onto there, and the ECU will just slide in and out. So that's in a perfect position and tucked out the way. Just pop the dash back in, and as you can see, it is tucked right up there, so you won't be able to see it when all the car's back together, and the ECU just slides in. And that also leaves the perfect gap for our fuse box to slot in. So with a little bit of a trimming and a bracket, that's where the fuse box is going to sit. So it is meant to sit up on a bulkhead, be in the engine bay, then all the wires be on the inside, but we're doing it the other way around, so we need a little bracket. So with a little bit of trimming from a piece of tin, we have this, and then a chop, and we have this. Perfect bracket, and fits together like so. So everything's safe on the back, and we can connect it up and mount it properly. Let's try that in the car. In that slot, made to measure, so that is where our fuse box is going to sit. And weld that onto the ECU bracket, which is mounted to the servo bracket. And check that out. That certainly isn't going anywhere. So you've got the EC mount and the fuse box mount, and that'll all bolt onto the original Mark 1 bulkhead holes. And nice bit of satin black on that. Looks like a factory part now. And the little bit that bolts on the end. So while that's drying, we'll tackle the other side of the ECU plug. So this is the one that mostly connects to the car. So we've got to see which ones of these we need and which we don't. So that is the engine loom thinned right out. So we've got everything chopped, only the essentials that we need. All these are going to be terminated off. They're all not needed for the conversion. So we've not got many left on our plugs here that we need. We've got, this is for our electronic throttle pedal, so we'll need all of that. The black one has just got the brake switch wire connected, so that can be connected up to the Mark 1 loom. And then the white one, all it's got left is the clutch switch. So these are for the 3 pedals. We don't usually fit the clutch switch in a Mark 1 because it's a bit of a pain. It's a lot easier in a Mark 2 and a Mark 3. But some people say it's a bit better with the rev change when you change gear if it knows the clutch is being put down. But to be honest, we haven't ever had any problems, but I'll leave that in that area just in case. Here is our main power relay for the coils. So this will be chopped off, and that will go to that new little plug we've just put through the bulkhead on the other engine loom. We've got our airflow meter plug, so that will come through the middle under the rack and up into the airflow meter. We've got our lander sensors over the back, so they'll run through the middle grommet and then find their home. And then all we've really got left is a few wires to connect up to the car. All that's left in the orange plug that we want is the grey and white, which is the diagnostic for the OBD port, and green and brown, which goes to our rev counter. That's going to have to go through a magic box to convert this digital signal into an analog signal for the Mark 1 clocks. And then in the brown plug, we've just got the black, which is the ignition live. We've got the red and green, which is the power main 12 volts to the ECU, and the power to the coils as well. So these are both going to originate from my new fuse box. The blue and yellow is the power for the airflow meter and for the lambda sensors. So that's going to go to the fuse box. And then we've just got the trigger wire, the purple and white, for the fuel pump relay. So that'll go to the main relay. I've also got the alternator DMF wire here. This isn't essential in conversions and you can leave it out, but as we've got the wire, we might as well fit it. And that's for digital frequency monitoring. Basically, that just detects how much load is on the alternator at a time, and then it can increase revs or act accordingly as it goes. So I might as well connect that as we're here. But that is looking a lot tidier. So now we can plug this into our ECU as that's in its fixed place and see where all these reach to. These are obviously going to go to the fuse box, which is right next to the ECU. So these can be chopped right down and just go into the back of the fuse box. These will go over to the pedal, so they're good. These will come through the middle. So we should be pretty well set up. So let's try it in the car. And there it is, all painted up and in. So we've got the original servo bracket. That's attached to the new ECU holder, and that's attached to my custom bracket there. And you can still get to all 3 bolts at the bottom. And then this top hole here is going to line up with where the old earth point used to be. That used to screw up there. So now, when we put our fuse box in, that top bolt will screw into that, so it'll secure it all in there nicely. Really happy with that. Then our ECU slides in to there, and then this is the bracket that goes on the end. These little ears go on those little tabs, and when we slide it in, those holes line up with those points. So they used to have security bolts on there, but we've got some nice Allen keys to go in. Yep. And that is what stops the ECU coming back out again. So let's get this screwed back in. There it is, all screwed on. And now with that top bolt in, that's nice and solid. So I'll just have to relocate this somewhere else. That's no big deal. That's sitting in just like factory. The cover fits on as well. I really like how self-contained this all is, and it does hide underneath the dash as well. So the bottom of the dash covers that up so you don't see any of it. Super happy with that execution. The only thing we are going to have to sacrifice is obviously this vent here used to come out and go to the air vent here, which isn't going to fit through here now, but it'll still have the center one, so it's not too big a deal. So we'll just put a little block over the end of that so it doesn't blow out into the ECU. Just had a few little deliveries from Retrofrication. This is our hydraulic clutch conversion kit, and what they do is they give you this little plate to weld onto the steering column, and that converts your cable clutch to hydraulic. So that goes on there, something like that. And then this will go to the pedal. You've got all new clevis pins, the bolts to put it on. You've got the reservoir that will go to there. Then you've got all your fittings that you need, and the AN line to go to the slave cylinder. So that will solve our hydraulic clutch problem. They also do this nice little plate, which is, we've just had our throttle pedal turn up with the blue plug that will plug straight into our wiring. And what this plate is, you see, that goes on there with all the holes. So this should bolt into the floor, so we'll try that in a minute. And then we can get our pedal in, but we just got all that at the same time. So let's try this throttle pedal in, and then we'll have somewhere to plug into. So here is the standard cable throttle pedal. That used to have the cable in the top there. It has a little bush in there, then it had the cable going out. So we get rid of this and see where our plate bolts in. See ya. Wash her off. Then we can get that out. Looks like it had a bit of a repair along there before. That's been welded back on. So someone's been giving it a big whoom on the throttle. Something that all of a sudden has become very annoying. Since putting the airlock ride on, we've put the ramps right down, which now means the doors don't clear the ramp to open. So I'm having to squeeze in and out every time. So I think I'm just going to take the door off because they're only bolt on, and I can get to the bolts just in there and there and get these doors out the way. Ooh. Never struggle. So what they say on their website is you only actually need to drill one hole for this. So it looks like this side one bolts onto here. This top one bolts through where the throttle cable used to go. It goes on there, and you just have to drill another hole there. I think what I'm probably going to do is weld this on in place where the holes are, because we don't want any bolts showing on the other side, because we're going for the flush bay. But that will sit in there and mount our pedal. But again, another really well thought out idea, using existing points so you know where it's got to go. So I'll clean this off, ready for welding, bolt it on, weld it on, get our pedal up in there. So there it is, all bolted in, and our pedal mounts perfectly like that, in line with all the rest. So that's all good. So what they're saying is normally you just drill one more hole there and it'll be a full bolt in. But for us on this side, we're going to be welding all these holes, so we don't want that one sticking out. So I'm just going to weld this in along the top. and then that'll be that job done. Nice and easy. That ain't going anywhere. There it is, all bolted in. Now we've got drive-by-wire throttle, and we've got our blue plug, so we can attach that to our loom, which will attach to the ECU. It's perfectly in line with the brake pedal. Nice job. I have made my own plates before, but this just made it so much easier. We'll call that a win. So I think at this stage of the wiring, we can wrap this episode up. What I wanted to make sure is that we've done all the modifications to the bulkhead, any brackets I needed welded on, any holes I need drilling, before we painted the engine bay. So I'm at the stage now where everything is mounted. We've got our fuse box, we've got our ECU, we've got our power distribution, we've got the original fuse box, we've got our throttle pedals, we've got all our new holes that now go through the bulkhead, and that's where the wiring looms are going to run. We've got our ones in the A-pillars where the light looms are going to come out and around. And we've got all the plans, what's going to go on the outside, what's going to go on the inside. So I think I'm going to leave the wiring here now and continue when the bay is painted and make all the looms to suit then. But I think priorities at the moment are to get everything else sorted. We've still got the fuel system to do. We've still got all the cooling, the radiators, the intercoolers, the boost pipes, everything else in the engine bay. Get all our brackets made up, and then we can take it all apart, get everything painted, get all the underneath stone chipped, and then I can just finish off the wiring, taking it to every point where it needs to be, and make it all perfect. It's all going to be braided. It's going to be a near invisible wiring loom. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Make sure you give it a like, and I know you guys have been really enjoying the build, and it does make it all worthwhile when I have so many people following. So we'll call this wiring stage 1 complete. There will be a whole nother video on stage 2. Once the bay's painted, I'll carry on with this. And of course, I'll be sure to film it for you guys as well to follow along. So I'll see you in the next episode. And until then, make sure you have fun.